Okay, I would like to call to order the meeting of the Williamson County Board of Education on November the 18th. We will begin by recording attendance. Board members, please record on your devices.
Why is it not automatically tallying roll? There are 12 members present.
Thank you. Our next item will be the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by followed by testing. Is that working? Okay, the next item on our agenda is our public comment period. We are fortunate to have 27 speakers tonight on a variety of topics. So that's going to give each person a minute, 1 minute, 15 seconds. As you come up, you'll notice a screen on the podium, computer screen there, that will show your time. So rather than me interrupting you or showing you a placard, just please pay attention to the screen that's on your podium and be aware of your time. I will call, as usual, call you up two at a time, so you'll be, the second person will be aware that you're in the queue. We are going to start with Amy Cook, followed by Eden Cook.
Hey guys, my name is Amy and I'm a mother of 3 kids that go to WCS schools, and I stand before you a third time to let you know it's still disheartening to see that Eden's dedicated theater director has concluded her only paid show getting compensated at a rate below minimum wage. She has already started daily rehearsals for the Junior Theater Festival and 2 shows to follow that, and she'll be doing that for free. In contrast, I have no hesitation in supporting my son's involvement in football and wrestling this year. His coach is amazing, by the way, and he deserves a raise as well. But get this, I'm not even joking, he received 2 supplement checks at a higher rate than, and almost the exact same amount of time as the theater director did for the performances of 1 show. So it's truly bananas. And what's even crazier is the way the supplements are set up. So I could come in as a fine arts supplement or fine arts staff right now. I know nothing about singing or dancing. I could work 200 hours a quarter, and I could get paid over $8,000 more than the director for the school this year, and that's bonkers. Lastly, I think it's incredibly unfair to make the fine arts teachers serve any more time on a committee collecting data that they've already provided you in the fall of 2023. The reason why a majority of the families move here is for these opportunities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Eden Cook, followed by Gray Rose.
Hello everyone, I hope that you are all doing great. I'm here for the 3rd time to talk about something that's really important to me in our middle school, the fine arts programs, especially our theater department. 2 weeks ago, we closed our amazing show called The Jazzy Chaperone at Mill Creek Middle School. So here's the thing. No, I'm only in middle school, but even I can understand how terribly lower the fine arts supplements are compared to the sports ones. It's not fair that the theater is lower than the fine arts supplements are compared to the sports one. It's not fair that my theater director just finished her only paid show, and now she's working for us for our upcoming JTF, Junior Theater Festival, and the next biggest show of the year, Beetlejuice, followed by 1 more after that. She's doing all this without getting paid. That just doesn't seem fair, especially when I get to see the other sports teams, like my brother's football and wrestling, have coaches who get paid for their time and effort for each sport, which Noah's coaches definitely should, but also shouldn't my coach. So I have an idea that no one said yet, but maybe could work. Let's move the theater to the sports supplements. After all, there's dancing, cheering, competitions, and using our muscles to build sets, using our diaphragms and vocal muscles to sing and act. I mean, what do you say? What's next? Thank you for listening.
Gray Rose, and then Izzy Rose will follow.
Hello, I'm Gray Rose, and I'm currently in the middle of rehearsing my second middle school production. I want to let you know that participating in theater has been a life-changing event for me already at just 12 years old. And in case you aren't aware, it is very time-consuming. After watching the last board meeting, I hear Mr. Golden say that compared to surrounding counties, our art stipends are higher. I'm curious if you, Mr. Golden, or any other school board members have attended any of the productions from the surrounding counties you are making this comparison to. I'm asking the decision makers here tonight to acknowledge that equitable pay in Williamson County shouldn't come from comparing us to other counties, but instead should be rooted in the idea that when you determine coaching stipends based on one set of standards and art stipends based on another. This is not fair. I want you to know that I think this pay scale determination goes against our WCS vision statement, excellent in academics, athletics, and the arts. The more I think about it, it even goes against the Be Nice campaign, which ironically enough originated in a Fairview school. I encourage all of you to extend this niceness, the kindness that we all claim and value, to our fine arts programs and show us that we matter just as much as athletics. I'm really concerned that if these stipends remained untouched and still, then we will lose these fantastic teachers. Thank you for your time.
Izzy Rose, followed by Traxon Pierce.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about something that has been bothering me since last school year, the way we value our arts teachers versus coaches. You've heard us say that arts teachers deserve more support, more respect, and yes, more pay. But I'm not just here to ask for it again. I'm here because I'm tired. I'm tired of feeling like our voices aren't loud enough, tired of seeing coaches get paid higher stipends, even though the people teaching us how to create, how to think critically, how to express ourselves are making so much less. And it's not just about the money. It's about what we're saying when we treat the arts as if they don't matter. It's about how we as a school and as a community choose to show what we truly value. Are we students like me that are we telling students like me that our creativity doesn't count? I'm not saying that sports aren't important. I know they teach teamwork, discipline, and resilience, but you know what? So do the arts. I'm asking you to stop treating arts like an afterthought. I'm asking you to look at the teachers who are shaping our futures with as much value as those who coach us in sports. We work hard in both, and we need to see that effort reflected in the way we fund and support them. So yes, I'm tired of speaking up and feeling like nothing changes, but I'm also hopeful. I'm hopeful because I believe you can make the right decision. I believe you can look this issue and see it for what it is, a chance to be fair, to be just, and to show all of us, students and teachers alike, that arts matter, that creativity matters, and that people who teach us how to create are just as important as people who teach us how to compete. Thank you.
Traxon Pierce, followed by Riley Bosworth. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, I am Traxon Pierce. I am a 6th grade student in Fairview. Quick question, why do we cheer for touchdowns and perfect test scores, but forget the arts? My incredible theater teacher who makes every student feel seen, valued, and loved deserves better pay. Arts teachers don't just teach us to act, sing, or paint. They teach confidence, creativity, and how to shine in a world full of rules. The theater is for everyone, athletes, math whizzes, sci kids, all of us. So let's be real. If we value creativity in our students, let's pay arts teachers what they're worth, because no one is clapping for underpaid inspiration. Thank you.
Riley, and then Jaden Spencer.
Hello, my name is Riley Bowser, and I am a student of Fairview Middle School. The reason I am speaking today is because there is a difference in supplements between performing arts teachers and athletic coaches. In the Williamson County school system, in addition to their yearly salary, coaches are compensated for their additional hours based on a percentage of this salary. The supplement paid to performing arts teachers is a set amount regardless of the countless hours at school and at home that they work on their programs. I'm in band, theater, and choir, and I am also the 8th grade president in our orchestra program. I have benefited from these programs. All 4 of them have helped me become a better person and find out who I truly am. I do not have anything against the athletic program. Go Falcons. My brother plays football and baseball. I will always try to make it to his games and other important events that my school holds for these programs. All of these programs are important for our growth and success. Please consider the importance of these programs and the wonderful jobs that these amazing teachers do to help us grow, and let's give them the equal compensation that these teachers deserve. Thank you.
Jaden Spencer, followed by Carolyn Brown.
Hello, I am Jaden, a student at Fairview Middle School. I participate in a variety of fine arts programs, such as playing trombone in our school band and having roles in both Frozen Jr. and now our show Matilda Jr. I stand here to tell you what fine arts is to me. A place of growth, a place where talent is allowed to thrive. I myself can say our FMS theater program, led by the wonderful Rachel Hansen, has enhanced my skills. I now know of talents I never knew I had. For as much as they invest in me, we should invest in them. They have taught me even more than a coach or a sponsor could. They treated me not as a human, but as an individual, one with good talent. For all the work and personal money they put in, they deserve more. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Carolyn Brown, followed by Genevieve Pajos.
Hi. Thanks, everyone, for taking time to be here with the kids' best interests at heart. Some of you are probably aware of a situation that was brought to our attention, but the occurrence may or may not be an isolated one, and it is a symptom of a bigger problem. The day after the election, one high school teacher told the students they weren't allowed to discuss the election at all while in school. Should they be heard talking about the election, they would be sent to the principal's office. This edict is wrong on so many levels. These students will soon, if they are not already voting, they are still developing their critical thinking skills. Some expected a different outcome and are wondering why their anticipated outcome didn't happen. This is a good opportunity to guide the class into an objective discussion examining local factors that might have impacted the outcomes, such as inflation, rising unemployment, immigration, etc., that motivated voting patterns, or the variables that might influence the difference in polling results and the actual election results, or an opportunity to discuss what takes place after an election, including certifications, the intent of checks and balances, cabinet appointments, and confirmation. Students,
Time,
similar to
please.
adults, have questions. Our students deserve better. In this incident, the principal did talk to their teacher involved,
Time,
but we
please.
need teachers to stay neutral.
Thank you. Genevieve Pajos, followed by Becca Ripley.
Good. Hello, my name is Genevieve Pajos, and I am the chapter chair for Moms for Liberty Williamson County, and I want to thank you for giving me the time to speak today. Last month, sadly, I was sick and was not able to attend the meeting, but after I watched, I was honestly just taken back by the continued push of division within our student body. I want to make something clear. When I am up here speaking or in any communication with the board, myself as well as my organization, I'm not simply representing my community or our students. We're out here speaking for what we believe to be for the benefit and the best interest of all students within Williamson County. We took a dress code policy, which clearly still includes all students, and turned it into a podium for further division and fear, making students believe that somehow a dress code policy was now going to allow children to bully other students, and that was simply not true. Whether we agree or disagree on an issue, we should all be looking out for the best interest of all students. We need to stop instilling fear and furthering division and start creating an environment of unity within our schools. This is a problem not only in our county, but in our entire country, and it is time we take steps to rectify that. We want to thank the board for continuing to make policies that unite all students and parents. I really hope that we can model that as well. Thank you, guys.
Becca Ripley, followed by Greg Cooley.
Hi, I'm Becca, and I'm a District 8 parent. On the second day of Transgender Awareness Week at last Thursday's work session, this board was presented with a proposal to eliminate legally sound and, in fact, legal counsel recommended protective and inclusive equal opportunity employment policy language. This proposal is alarming and disheartening. Legal counsel advises and has advised on multiple occasions that this language is precisely in line with what would be required should a lawsuit be lost to a discriminated against party. Additionally, the precedential case indicates that not only would the fallout include an inordinate amount of settlement money and legal fees, but a version of the DEI training currently forbidden in Williamson County schools would become required. Now, as thrilled as I might be if that much needed training were implemented district-wide, I'm just not sure that that is the universal sentiment in this room. Our LGBTQ plus community members continue to fight for their rights, including, first and foremost, the right to simply exist. If there's an amendment that eliminates the inclusive language, it will effectively erase these already marginalized community members. In this case, it is so straightforward to fight with them and for them. We do nothing. We simply leave the policy as written. Let's contribute to the safety of our vulnerable students by keeping all of our staff safe.
Greg Cooley, and then Courtney Foley.
Good evening. My name is Greg Cooley, and I'm here because the proposed school calendar fails to address a critical issue for many families with joint custody. Since enrolling my children in our school years ago, we have never shared a single fall or spring break together. This has been a profound loss of family time that we can never reclaim. The main issue is that the breaks are imbalanced. The current schedule favors one parent consistently because they end up getting both fall and spring breaks if they have a week-on, week-off schedule, which most do. This neglects the other's opportunities to bond with their children during these critical breaks. It's been suggested to just change the custody plan to have the other parent alternate it with you. But unfortunately, altering custody for breaks is costly, impractical, and disrupts the child's routine because that would then force one parent to go 3 whole weeks without seeing their children. Fortunately, the solution is simple. Shifting just one break by a week forward or backward, which many neighboring counties have done, would equitably distribute school break time, enhancing the well-being of our student and supporting their family life. I urge you to consider the needs of families like mine and move the breaks 1 week back or forth. Thank you.
Thank you. Courtney Foley, and then James and Courtney McCarthy.
Good evening. I'm here to ask the board to consider moving either fall break or spring break up or back just a week, like Mr. Cooley just presented. As a parent with joint custody of school-age children who alternate weeks, the current calendar schedule of fall break and spring break gives one parent both weeks without the kids or with the kids. So as he said, we would have 3 weeks without our children or 3 weeks with our children, which just isn't fair to either party or the kids. So if one of the breaks were moved up or back just 1 week, it would provide both parents to have the quality and necessary time with their children. Surrounding counties have oddly spaced breaks, whereas Williamson County breaks are evenly spaced. And when developing a parenting plan, alternating weeks provided the most stability during an unstable transition. And now that we're realizing with this plan, only one of us has the luxury of spending both fall break and spring break with our kids. I ask that you please consider moving one break either up a week or back a week to spend the precious time with our children for parents with joint custody. Thank you.
Thank you. James and Courtney McCarthy, then followed by Theodore Pisa.
Hi, my name is Courtney McCarthy, and this is just, our intention is to make this a public record. Our daughter was hit in the head twice by a soccer ball last Friday, November 8th. She was sent to the nurse after much crying, and the nurse basically told her, oh, it should only sting, fix your shirt, and sent her on her way. When in fact, our daughter did have a mild concussion from the kicks. We're not upset that she got hit with the ball. That's sports. We tried to bring it up with the nurse, and she basically didn't even have the right places noted in her chart that my daughter was injured with. She was hit twice, one face on and one on the side of her head, in a row. So she was sent back. We contacted the principal, Paula Waits, and she basically sent us some very almost condescending emails letting us know that, oh, well, we'll take care of it. No big deal, ho-hum. We're not really happy at all with how this is. We also came to our attention that Williamson County Schools do not have any sort of concussion protocol outside of extracurricular sports. So when an incident like my daughter gets hit in gym class, the nurse didn't even care enough or show her any empathy to go back and ask her questions as to how she felt. So she's treated for a TBI right now at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Theodore Pisa, followed by Ashley Webster.
Good evening. My name is Theodore Francis Pisa Jr. I am a queer single father of two here in the beautiful city of Franklin, Tennessee, and I stand here speaking on behalf of my children and the marginalized whose quality education is at stake. Marginalized communities in our county stand to lose crucial access to education and resources in the face of Bill Lee's for-profit voucher scam. It came as no shock to see District 3 help pass a measure repaving the way for this voucher scheme, and what a national embarrassment. You're playing games with access to school counseling and mental health services for those who need it. You're reducing access to free and low-cost meal programs. You hamstring music and the arts, and you're risking futures and careers by diminishing STEM programs with this program. Supporting a dark program masquerading as school choice, which siphons tax money away from special education and over to special interests, puts you embarrassingly on the wrong side of history. And to the at-risk, to the minorities, to the special needs, and the queer kids in this county and state, we, the rational adults of Tennessee, see you, and we will not go down without pushing back on grifters and some of the blind ignorance that is now seated before us on this board, and nothing will be made great again through normalizing bigotry, censorship, and revisionism while raiding your school's piggy bank. Thank you.
Ashley Webster, followed by Kimberly Calcote.
Hi, I'm Ashley Webster, and I have two kids who graduated from Williamson County Schools. I would like to thank the previous gentleman who spoke. I share some of his sentiments. I have two queer children. One of them attended a funeral service yesterday for a young trans woman who had just gotten access to gender-affirming care. So I give that to you for submission this week in Transgender Remembrance Week. What I'm here to talk about, though, is the FOIA-ing of your emails after you all took a vote to rescind the anti-voucher resolution, saying that your constituents largely were wanting you to do this and were, against the anti-voucher resolution that was passed in the first place. And I'll show that the numbers run from 61 emails against rescinding it, all the way to the highest number of 69 emails to Margie Johnson against rescinding it. And then the number of emails pro rescinding are in the 1 or 2 position, and only Jay Galbraith got 2 emails for rescinding the anti-voucher resolution. So I would like for you in the future to be more transparent and methodical when you go about gathering the input from your constituents for these matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Calcote, and then followed by Christopher Savoy.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Calcote. I'm a mom of 4, and 3 of my children attend Williamson County Schools. Williamson County Schools prides itself on its quality education, but in one area we're failing: recess. While our district provides 20 to 30 minutes of recess in elementary, is that enough to maximize the benefits of screen-free unstructured play? The common misconception is that recess is just a break, but research, including our own Department of Education, highlights its critical role in developing students' social skills, emotional well-being, academic success, and physical health. The LINK project at TCU launched 60 minutes of recess in school districts across the U.S. and over 9 years documented its impact on children's education and emotional well-being. Results included a 40% decrease in off-task behavior, 10% rise in math, and 7% rise in ELA standardized test scores for fourth graders, and a significant reduction in chronic stress and anxiety. We urge you to implement 1 hour of recess, split throughout the day, which only means really carving out about an additional 30 minutes. This change could boost student engagement, well-being, and academic success, ensuring our county continues to lead in educational excellence while fostering a balanced environment for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Christopher Savoy, and then followed by Brittany Pope.
Hi, I'm Christopher Savoy, and I have an aerospace engineering degree, a systems engineering degree, and I'm working on a counseling degree. And I was asked to talk about why recess is important. And it's not really about recess. What it's about is that I'm sure all of you are ready to stand up and take a brief break and kind of digest all of the passion and the information that everybody's brought. Studies show that at any age, taking a break to digest information improves quality of learning and retention over time. For 5-year-olds, for 7-year-olds, for 9-year-olds who have not learned to control their body, their mouth, or their mind, and sometimes other things, it can be really challenging to sit for 2 or 3 or 4 hours without any kind of a break. Recess is a fantastic one. The arts that we're advocated for are another one. Really anything that gives the children a break from rigorous academic, intensive learning, just as you guys are experiencing right now, is something that could benefit all of our children and make them better learners and better people over time. So I really appreciate your time and attention, not just to me, but to all the issues that you've heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Brittany Pope, and then followed by Tricia Reichter.
Hi, I'm Brittany Pope. I have a daughter at Mill Creek Elementary, and we all agree that we want our children to thrive in school. And thriving means being emotionally regulated, socially connected, and developmentally supported, not just academically successful. Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that you must meet a child's basic needs: food, sleep, exercise, confidence, before they can reach full academic and social potential. Developmentally appropriate activities, movement, hands-on exploration, and opportunities for social interaction are critical for building foundational skills children need to succeed. Our education system demands more from the kids than their developmental stage can support. K through 2 have 150 minutes of ELA, 90 of which are block time, despite the research that 5- and 6-year-olds have attention spans of only 12 to 18 minutes, with 5th grade maxing out at only 35 minutes. What are they absorbing, and how much is wasted on redirection and reteaching? It stresses their focus far beyond their capacity, leading to an alarming rise in mental health and behavioral issues. The solution is clear. We need to rethink how we structure learning. To achieve academic excellence, we must prioritize students' well-being, nurturing their physical, mental, and emotional health through play. Thank you.
Thank you. Tricia Reichter, followed by Tracy Anderson.
I'm Tricia Reichter, a mom and nurse, here to emphasize the critical role of recess for our children's physical and mental well-being. Physical activity is a basic need and is vital for kids' physical and mental health. It supports healthy bodies, lowers the risk of chronic diseases like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and when kids run and play, it boosts blood flow to the brain, which improves cognitive functions like memory, attention, and processing speed. Activity enhances mood and mental health by reducing stress, anxiety, and depression. Per our state's physical activity report, it improves self-esteem, emotional regulation, academic performance, and when physically active from age 6 to 8, it decreases symptoms of major depressive disorder. The benefits for growing minds and bodies are endless. Adults recognize the importance of movement in the workplace, with employers adopting wellness programs and activity-focused initiatives. Yet in schools, children are more sedentary than ever. Today, 1 in 5 kids are clinically obese, and Tennessee's kids rank number 6th in the nation. Vanderbilt just got $10 million to study child obesity. The Link study noted a 6% decrease in body fat in 1 year with 60 minutes of recess. Adequate recess is key to beating this crisis. It fosters healthier habits and coping mechanisms. improves behavior and performance with active kids scoring higher on tests and excelling in math. Please give kids the recess they need to thrive physically, mentally, and academically. Thank you.
Thank you. After Tracy Anderson, we have Kayla Johnstone.
Hello, my name is Tracy Anderson. I live in Franklin, and I have twins who attend Woodland. What did you do at school today, sweetie? So many times the excited answer has been something that happened at recess. My daughter has high-functioning autism and is sensitive to loud noises and overstimulating environments. I remember when she told me how excited she was to find a jumping spider who lived in a hole in a pipe on the playground at school. She showed this little booper to several kids and her sister. She would visit it often and give me updates. She made new friends because of that little spider she found at the playground at recess. These girls are still her best friends in middle school. Kids use recess to engage in physical play, for social interaction, but also as a quiet respite, to investigate nature, to discover the shapes in clouds, to feel the wind on their skin and let the sun shine on their precious faces, and to store up vitamin D. Emotional regulation is nature's profound gift. Children should be given enough time to enjoy peace, too. Our current allotted time is not enough. It's absurd, it's fair, and we can do better. I urge you to invest in our school children's joy and improve their mental health. I urge you to talk to special education teachers and paras for their important input on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kayla Johnstone, followed by Aaron Grimmett.
Hi, I'm Kayla Johnstone, and I have two students in Williamson County School Zone. It's essential to improve academic performance and mental health, correct? Physical activity enhances students' cognitive, social, emotional, and executive function skills, driving academic success. When underdeveloped, kids struggle with self-regulation, social interaction, and problem solving. Overloading kids with developmentally inappropriate tasks increases stress and frustration, mimicking ADHD symptoms. The Iris Center at Vanderbilt warns that poor social-emotional skills are linked to increased rates of suspension, expulsion, academic challenges, increased anxiety, and depression. Today, 94% of teachers report a sharp decline in these critical skills, fueling a rise in classroom disruptions. Per our State Department, unstructured play reduces disruptive behaviors and is essential for student growth, fostering self-regulation, creativity, cooperation, and executive skills like working memory, emotional regulation, and flexible thinking, all key to lifelong learning. The evidence shows to support a kid's mental health and academic success, we must make unstructured play and recess a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. After Aaron Grimmett is Ashley Potts.
Good evening. My name is Erin Grimmett, mom of an amazing fourth grader enrolled in Williamson County Schools. Rising behavioral challenges are a key factor in teacher burnout, leading many educators to leave the profession. This issue is increasingly urgent. According to the Educational Research Review, it shows that nearly 50% of teachers leave within the first 5 years of their profession, with student misbehavior being a primary reason for job dissatisfaction. Additional recess is a straightforward solution. The Link study recorded that increasing recess to 60 minutes led to a 40% drop in off-task behavior, setting a clear standard. Providing students with 60 minutes of unstructured play will improve self-regulation, reduce disruptive behavior, and ultimately help retain teachers by easing the burden of classroom management. Teacher retention is a top priority for school board members and community stakeholders. Implementing additional recess periods offers a concrete way to enhance teacher job satisfaction and create a more focused, productive environment for students. Let's foster a supportive school culture by addressing these challenges to keep valued teachers in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and call out the final three, Ashley Potts, Katie Medlin, and David Grimmett.
Okay, hi, my name is Ashley Potts. I have 3 kiddos at Grassland Elementary. Despite laws protecting recess time, we continue to hear stories of recess being withheld across our district. While advocating for increased recess time, we must also ensure that children receive the current recess that they're entitled to. The state law 4.206 states that recess cannot be taken away as punishment or withheld to complete schoolwork. Physical activity should never be used as a form of discipline, and withholding it denies children the proven benefits of outdoor play. Recent testimonies reveal that some teachers allow students to vote between watching a movie or playing outside, with screen time often winning. With screen time use amongst children at an all-time high, the studies link it to negative effects on developing brains. Programs like Danny Go are currently used for movement breaks, but screens are undermining the purpose of these breaks. Research shows that screens overstimulate and decrease focus, ultimately impairing self-regulation even when kids are moving. Offering movies during recess risks making screen time a habit when outdoor play should be our priority. Children need outdoor play for physical and mental well-being. Let's keep recess screen-free, and let's get these kids outside and moving.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm just going to tell you a quick story about our family. We have 3 kids in Williamson County Schools now, but we actually pulled our 3 kids out of Williamson County Schools scales due to recess. They love and need to be outside. They get 25 minutes on a perfect day, not too hot, not too cold, not sprinkling, and sometimes it's actually up to the teacher's mood. We just met friends from Ohio at the beach, and the same age kids get 3 outdoor periods throughout the day. I think it's 20 minutes 3 times. I was done when my athletic 4th grader who struggles with focus came home almost in tears on a beautiful April day last year. He said, "Mom, our teacher let us vote on indoor recess versus outside, and the class voted 80% to stay inside on Chromebooks." Kids need vitamin D and fresh air to think, for their moods and well-being, for their brain to function. After much debate, we changed schools to a school with more outdoor time. They got to have unstructured play on a farm, play in creeks, make forts. It was incredible. Their well-being, mood, self-control, and focus on homework in the classroom and after school was so much better with our recess. They were honestly like different children. They were still under a full curriculum and, yes, got all of their ELA and math minutes in. We have since moved them back to scales, and I asked my son today about what he misses from his old school. He said the only thing is recess. He said recess, but that's a big thing. I told my kids why I was coming here tonight, and they were so excited, hugged me, told me good luck, and then passionately said, "Mom, please help make this happen for all my friends. It would be amazing."
Should you say yes to recess? That's the question before you. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to host 12 9-year-old girls for a birthday party. I'm pretty sure some of them spent the night. I don't know how many. But the next day, I asked my little girl what was her favorite part. And it wasn't the presents and it wasn't the cake. It was staying up till 3 o'clock, playing with her friends, making up games, and talking. That's what recess is. Recess is an opportunity for our children to sit down, to use their imaginations, to play. But how can they do that in 20 minutes? That's how long they have right now. We are asking you to extend that time, to give them the opportunity to actually spend time with their friends, make up stories, talk to each other, and talk about what's going on in their lives. As a father and as an attorney who has represented over 1,000 children that are involved in serious situations, I think we can all agree that recess and school is the only time that children actually have an opportunity to be kids. Given that, I would ask that you say yes to recess. And as an add-in, I wouldn't be where I am except for arts teachers, so I'd add that too.
All right, thank you so much to all the speakers, each and every one of you. We will now move on to approval of our agenda. I want to make a couple of comments about the agenda because there have been some changes since this was publicized. Really 3 changes. One is that we are adding, this was discussed at our work session on Thursday, but we need to add it to the agenda, and that's the school board norms policy change that we talked about. We're going to insert that under new business. That's going to become new item D. And then items D and E that are currently there will follow that. So they'll become E and F. The second one is that we discussed Thursday night and had on the agenda a discussion of the non-exempt pay scale and some changes that were going to be made there. That has been removed. I'm going to ask Mr. Golden to comment as to why, but that's being removed from the agenda because of some federal action. And then thirdly, I suggested to Mr. Golden this morning that we remove the head lice policy from the agenda. He agreed. It became apparent to me after the discussion on Thursday night and after receiving a lot of feedback from the public that we really need more clarity on this. We really need to understand this better and understand whether any substantive changes are actually needed, and if they are, what those might be. I think it's going to take some more time to get there. So we pulled that from the agenda. That will be sent back to Policy Committee, and then we will discuss any potential revisions then, and if it needs to come back to the board for a vote, then we'll put that through the process at that time. So, Mr. Golden, do you want to comment on either of those, on the pay scale or the head lice policy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go backwards. The head lice policy that you mentioned last, we know that there has to be a balance between the health department standards where we know this is not, head lice is not a communicable disease. We also know that there's not an infection related to head lice, but there's the potential for an infestation. And so right now we have a good balance, but it deserves some additional discussion. So we thought it was wise as well to spend some more time discussing that. And we want to make sure, especially within that context of pediculosis or head lice, that we honor our family's need to not allow that to spread while still respecting every individual student's privacy. And so that balance is something that's very important to us. On the non-exempt pay scale, the day after our board work session, there was actually a U.S. District Court in Texas that ordered the Department of Labor to stay implementation of the new regulations related to those non-exempt positions. Now, that might not have a direct impact on us, but we felt like making a decision in November for something that has the potential to go into effect in January, but also might change in January, especially given that recent decision. Again, the day after that night we spoke about it, the wise thing to do is to give it some time before we make a recommendation on a pay change in the middle of the school year. So that's why we're mentioning those. Final item, school board norms. It was just a typographical error. So thank you for correcting that, and I think Mr. Bostic actually noticed it. So thank you for that.
Yes, he did. Thank you for catching that. Okay, so with that explanation, we will need to get a motion and a second on the floor. I'm going to remind you that we talked about doing motions and seconds on our devices. So you will see a button for motion. If someone would like to do motion and second, great, okay. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay. I'm told we need to say for the record who makes the motion in the second. So the motion was made by Mr. Welch, second by Mr. Bostic. Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the agenda as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is approved. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Need to also get a motion and a second on that, please. Motion made by Mr. Bostic, second by Ms. Reeves. Any discussion of the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved, and with that, you approve the October 21st, 2024 school board meeting minutes, board policies on second reading, which are 4.600 and 4.6051. Approval of the 2024-25 hearing officers list. Approval of LEA compliance report. Adoption of the Williamson County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan. Approval of the building model request, Creekside School shade structure. Approval of right-of-way request and easement acquisition from the town of Thompson Station at Thompson Station Elementary and Middle Schools, and the recommendation for field trip fee requests. All right, item 5, communications to the board. Superintendent's report, Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, board members, for the work you did Thursday night at our work session, where we had a lot of good, robust discussion. I'm not going to spend any time repeating that discussion we had, except to just mention a couple of items. Number one, we had a report on our Gallup Q12 Employee Engagement Survey, which is in its third year. Second, we gave you what I think of as a primer on budget, maybe drilling into a little bit of detail enough to let you know it's going to be complex. So certainly encourage you to double check the PowerPoint that our CFO, Rachel Farmer, shared with you and ask her if you have any questions as we progress through the budget process. I also want to mention a thank you to you all as board members. We're in our third month of the new iteration of this board, and just last week, I know that many of you attended Veterans Day celebrations at our schools. I sat with some of you in that. I know that some of you went to Jordan Elementary School's Blue Ribbon celebration. We participated in that. I know that some of you went to Saturday morning's robotics competition at Brentwood Middle School. Many others. I was so tempted to name you, but the reality is I could name each one of you for something you've done to participate in the schools. I encourage you to continue to do that. I think the more time you spend in schools, the more you're going to get a grasp of what's going on there and be able to ask those informed questions as we go through our excellent work. I want to especially thank our teachers and our staff for the work that they've done in serving our students. Thanksgiving is coming up. It is, of course, a holiday break. I did want to mention one piece related to our calendar, and I know it's an agenda item, and we may have some detailed discussion related to it. Generally speaking, the calendar is structured on that parameter of trying to make sure students don't start before August and then having that winter break based on what day Christmas Day and New Year's Day fall. They're always the same day of the week because they're 7 days apart. And then working our way back so that fall break falls in between the end of the first quarter and the beginning of the second quarter. Winter break falls in between the end of the second quarter and the beginning of the third. And spring break, of course, falls in between the end of the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth. And so it's really designed for that purpose so that we have the most sound instructional calendar we have. Of course, there's additional holidays mixed in on that. Finally, Mr. Chair, I do want to specifically thank some of our other public commenters. Students, I very much appreciate you all sharing your thoughts. I love that it's a combination of script and impromptu. It's fun to see that. It does my heart good to see the work that you all do related to that. We actually initiated this conversation when we started talking to our WCA leadership about art supplements because we see that there's a gap. Our plan is and has been to address this through our budget process, and our WCA leadership is talking with us about that. Another item on our agenda is the superintendent goals for the year. Of course, we're in November, but we're talking about the superintendent goals for the year. One of my proposed goals is to prepare a pay plan within budget that especially focuses on supplements and hard-to-fill positions. Related to that, I did let you all know a month or two ago that as part of the process, we did a market analysis. And you all may recall that I said we did a market analysis. And if we just relied on market analysis, that there wouldn't be an indication that it was important, which means we're going to have to rely on other factors. And so we are working on that. Also, I wanted to thank the commenters about recess. I want to give you a little bit of understanding of where the state is. The state standard is 15 minutes a day, and we believe that's low. Right now, we're at 20 to 30 minutes. We've seen some research. I've seen research comparing 30 minutes to none. I've seen research up to an hour with some recommendations. Dr. Julia Oyer and I, she's our assistant superintendent for elementary schools. We've had some pretty detailed discussions already. We've talked about that transition time that some of our students have, and that transition time is a little bit different depending on the grade level. Kindergartners might have transition time between topics, between content areas. Some of our older elementary students might have some transition time going from class to class. But the recess especially is something that we know deserves a little bit more discussion, and we're going to initiate that discussion with our leaders, especially on the implications of a change. That's a significant change, going from 25 or 30 minutes to an hour. What that might mean for our schedules, for mapping of services for students with disabilities, all those state requirements that they build in with that 15-minute expectation for us. So we're going to be doing that because it does deserve some work. So with that, Mr. Chair, before I bring Carol Birdsong up, do you all have any questions?
Ms. Wyatt?
Yes, I was going to ask if you could please speak more to the Gallup Q12 engagement survey from our employees. I was just really impressed with those results, and I want to make sure that we're sharing that good news. Before you do, I just want to say thank you to the leadership team that's here tonight and to all the teachers and staff in our schools.
Thank you for that, Ms. Wyatt, that prompt. We spent some time talking about Gallup Q12, and most everybody has heard of Gallup, the Gallup organization that does research on so many levels. That organization is coming up on their 100th anniversary. The program that we are using with the help of Gallup is what they call Q12, which through their research has identified the top 12 questions related to employee engagement. And it varies from do I have a best friend at work to do I have the tools I need, and on and on and on. You can actually Google those 12 questions. We started this thoughtfully 3 years ago because we felt like we had an opportunity to grow in engagement, which we believed had the potential to improve job satisfaction, had the potential to improve our retention rate, and really just overall improve how those who serve our students do at their job. What we found was the first year we initiated it, we were at about the 30th percentile among those who participate in Gallup. So among those organizations that thoughtfully work on this, we were at the 30th percentile. We now, 2 years later, are at the 86th percentile. In that. And it just reminds me of what I've known and see so often in so many different contexts, that we have excellent people who have the professional skills, and if we give them the tools and help them start working on something, they're going to succeed. We see that in so many areas. It does my heart good, let me put it that way, to see how we're growing. Even our leadership team has done it as a leadership team. And I'll give you one example of what we've worked on as a team. We've worked on thanking each other a little bit more, because that's one of those Q12s. We had, without thinking about it, gone into the process of get the work done, move on. But there's value in all of us spending some time building each other up and supporting each other as a team. It's not a supervisory issue. It's a team issue. So thank you for the prompt.
Any other questions for Mr. Golden before we move to Ms. Birdsong?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Carol Birdsong is going to share some district celebrations.
Thank you, and my feelings are not going to be hurt that half the audience left when you said that I was coming up to speak. It's okay. I'm not taking it personally. Okay, we are going to start tonight with athletics, and we have the Nolensville High School Class 3A Girls Volleyball State Champions. Yes, their coach is Brett Young. Congratulations to them. If I'm correct, I think they defeated Brentwood. Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, how impressive, though, is it that we had Brentwood and Nolensville competing for that title? Love it, love it, love it. All right, now we're going to cross country, and this is Asher Oates. And Independence High School won the boys cross country, and their coach is Luke Finley. And this is Claire Stegall, and also from Nolensville. She is a repeat state champion winner in girls cross country. Christopher Demetra, her coach. And then the boys, Brentwood High School, girls cross country team, Robert Patinas is the coach for the Brentwood girls. So lots of superstar athletes out there representing us. Congratulations to them. Now let's do academics, and we are going to talk about perfect ACT scores. We have 5 students who we are going to celebrate tonight. First, this is John Choi from Brentwood High School. This is Parsa Caroli from Brentwood High School. Katie Wang, Brentwood High School. Evan Moore, Page High School, and Connor Britt from Independence High School. Now we're moving to the arts, and we have 28 students who have been named to the All-State Choir. And so these are your students from Brentwood High School: Tatum Averett, Addison Bracey, Jackson Campbell, Taylor Deans, Reagan Schmicker, and their choral director is Natalie Pratt. From Centennial High School, this is Anna Myrick. Her choral director is Jonathan Vest. From Nolensville High School, David Fick, Jacob Gray, Layla McKinney, and Anna Ross Wetzel. Their choral director is Cassidy Van Amberg. From Page High School, Peter Singletary, Brock Nason, the choral director there. From Ravenwood High School, Ashi Ergawa, Brooke Boyer, Eli Miller, Andrew Mueller, Koina Mokergi, Jack Odell, Audrey O'Donnell, Drew Porter, Sarah Smith. Rose Helmers is the choral director at Ravenwood. And from Summit High School, Zach Ariotti, Cadence Aurora, Emily Derrick, Olivia Elston, Melissa Hoggard, Nate Hoggard, Autumn Schaefer, and Wyatt Yomer. Kaylin Williams is the choral director at Summit High School. Congratulations to all of our students and the staff folks that support them.
And Mr. Chair, that is my report.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. I don't have a report. I do just want to thank Deputies Randy Purcell and Guy Whitley for being here tonight. Thank you, sir, or gentlemen. Okay, let's move on to new business. First item for discussion is approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is our annual 5-year capital plan that we prepare at the prompt and request of County Commission so that it helps them with their bond ratings. We also, of course, use this as a planning document. Certainly open any questions you may have. We had a good discussion at the work session. I want to mention one specific item. Well, actually two. The middle school on the northeast part of the county is still scheduled to open in fall 2017, which means we do expect that we'll make, 2027. I lost a decade there. Fall 2027, we do expect that we will, at the end of this fiscal year, be making some funding requests from County Commission. Also, we have a proposal to actually move back the 1 year to the fall of 2028, the Northeast Elementary School, based on the total numbers in the 4 elementary schools in that region being projected, where we would probably have somewhere around 400 and 450 available seats still in 2027.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion by Mr. Galbraith, second by Mr. Beasley. We can now open this up for discussion. Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, I know we talked a lot about the individual items, and since the work session, I just keep on thinking about ways that we can provide more information to the county commission. So I'm perfectly fine submitting this as is. I want to make sure that if we add some information to this between the approval and when you send it off, like an editorial change isn't significant to that, right? I mean, because what I'm asking is that we add some supplemental information that always comes up, and what I'm thinking, the date that if we could add to this the date on which these items first appeared, the year that they first appeared on the 5-year capital plan, as well as the original amount and
the expected closing date. I think that's going to inform a lot about how long these things have been on here. The fact that this is a planning document and not a spending plan, and so it'll just help to know, even with the growth that we've had. I mean, I know for sure, I don't know the exact date. It'll obviously take going through some of these things a little bit of time. I'm happy to help if you need, but the split log middle school went on the plan well before Jordan Elementary was thought of and built, because it was out further and it finally came to fruition. And then we almost voted it together with the elementary school, and we decided to wait. And now by the time it gets built, it'll be a decade between the opening of Jordan and the opening of this, which is crazy. But that's just what we do. So I anticipate the likelihood that that some of these outward things actually open in the year that we're projecting them is pretty low. But also want to focus on the fact that with waiting, we've had just an unbelievable amount of inflation that nobody could have imagined. So usually there's a cost of waiting. I think in this case, the cost of waiting is well in excess of what anybody could have expected. So.
Thank you for those suggestions, and you're right. Some of these become, as practical matters, placeholders, right? Because we don't ask for the work until we know there's a need, and so some of them do move from year to year. We'll make sure to do that. That's a good suggestion. Chairman Brown and I have also talked about making sure that the county commissioners know our projections, especially in those areas. Another piece related to that is district-wide, our student population numbers have flattened out and even actually gone down. I think maybe, if I'm not mistaken, 0.75% district-wide this past year. But we still have some areas growing. We have some other areas where folks aren't moving out of their homes, right, because it's such a good place to live. And that can have an impact as well. There's limits on how far a bus can travel. You can't travel across the whole county and run a bus route. So we'll make sure we include some of that detail as well. Thank you for that suggestion.
We've got a couple of folks that are in the queue, but before we do that, before I call on them, can we get the capital plan document back up on the screen, please? Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Clements.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's been fascinating to look at the history of our county's growth. And I think the big marker in the middle of that growth was the year 2020, which I've heard people say that year didn't do anything for me. It kind of got us off askew. And I think it was interesting to look back to the years before. I mean, we were growing with, 1,000 a year, 1,000 a year. I mean, it was a lot. And then when 2020 happened, then you see it just a change, a really big change. And so, when we came back 21, 22, we had some growth. Then 2 years ago, we lost about 100 students. And then this year, we lost 400 students, around that. So we're seeing just a big change. It's like we were going down a roller coaster, and now we're going back up. And I think sometimes I'd like to look at this document more closely, and it would be neat to kind of, just like we did with the budget, to look at this document maybe over a couple months coming up to it, because I think I just have a hard time just looking at these last 3 years thinking we're going to build 8 new schools in 5 years. I think we might need to kind of relook at that, and with that in mind, we've seen over the last, with all the new buildings, the new Page Middle School, the new Page High School, the new Brentwood Middle School, and then we see some older schools that have missed out on, there's just a growing disparity between some of these schools. And so instead of focusing on building more schools in this season where our growth might not be as strong as it was, say, 7 years ago, I would really like to focus on some of our schools like Franklin High. They haven't had a lot done to their athletics since the mid-'80s, and so to take this time now where we're not growing, because it could happen again, so let's focus on these schools, these older schools, get them up to some of their counterparts on these newer schools and really focus on those renovations. And so I'm not voting for this. I'm not voting in favor of this, primarily because this is a document that we do send to our county commission, and I just have a hard time seeing some of this coming to fruition in 5 years. So, and I'd also like to see us really focus in on some of these schools that need some attention.
Thank you for that. We do have renovations in our programming, and of course, we're working on the replacement to the Brentwood Middle School, the Page High, Page Middle. Part of that it has included us adding capacity at those particular spots where there's some need. On the growth versus not side, what we traditionally do is look at 5 basic methods of dealing with it in those areas where there is growth. We squeeze in as much as we can, which might mean a teacher on a cart here and there. We will bring portables, then we'll rezone. We also, when opportunity arises and it's appropriate, expand, and we've done that for some of the high schools. And then finally, the 5th thing is to ask for an increase for a new school. But concurrent with that, we do work on some renovations. And a lot of that's based on need. Our maintenance staff reviews those. We do have on the current proposal a Hillsborough renovation funding in addition to some work at Grassland Middle. But I see what you're saying, especially in those areas, those older schools that are built in the 80s or 90s, and actually Hillsborough is older than that. They do deserve some renovation work as well.
I'm perfectly aware that we can't bus kids all the way from Nolensville up to the northwest, but we may need to, maybe consider kind of some migration, a northward expansion, northwest.
Yeah, there's always a potential for a domino effect. I will say, generally speaking, when a zone has been stable, I'm going to have a hard time getting to where I might recommend a complete shift of a zone that's been in good shape for a long time. But we're certainly open to that as well.
Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. So I first learned of the 5-year capital plan when it appeared on the agenda for November 8th. It wasn't mentioned at the school board orientation in August, nor was it mentioned at the planning session on October 21st. So asked questions, made a comment during the work session that, while I would love to have 2 new schools, the price tag is $158 million. So I had concerns about what data was used to make the determination. Now, I do appreciate what you gave us because I think the elementary was going to be before the middle, but when you did look at the data, it's obvious that the middle schools are the ones that are overflowing. So I sent an email after the meeting just saying, could I have more information about how this document was created, what data were used to determine which priorities are which, especially we're hearing at Fairview, sewage is coming through the bathrooms, and I know we got older buildings. College Grove Elementary in my district needs some upgrades. The reply was a link to a spreadsheet similar to this one. I think the numbers had changed, but again, I don't really know the process. I don't know what data were used to determine that priority. And it just seems like we're just trying to rush this through and that there's just a lack of transparency around this entire process. And so at this time, I really don't think I have enough information to make an informed decision about this matter.
Certainly respect that, especially with this being the first year. That's something that we'll work on in other contexts, especially when we're dealing with those annual items that we give to the county commission. I did want to specifically mention that for each of these items, when we make a request for funding, there will be another vote. So generally speaking, the design of this document is to let folks know these items may be coming. And so we'll make sure to give you all some more detail before that comes.
Mr. Bostic?
Yeah, I just echo what Donna and Margie kind of mentioned about just when it comes to renovations. And we talked about this a little bit, the work sessions, but just to have it here as well, you know. I know with Fairview, and we've talked about, I know they're working on the plumbing issues over there with Fairview Elementary, but I would love to know as well kind of what the criteria is for even making it to a list like this. Like what has to be in place, how's that assessed, who does that assessing? Because I do know and have heard from several constituents about some needs that we have over in my area of the woods, and I'd like to see that happen maybe, or at least discussion around it. So just wanted to have that noted.
Actually, Mr. King might have something to share.
Thank you, Mr. Bostic, and thank you for the comment. So we'll do a better job of explaining this, especially to the new board, and I'd be glad to meet with anybody that wants to sit down and go over how we come up with this. But one thing I do want to mention, the 5-year capital is our large projects, and it's kind of broken down into 4 categories you can see with new construction, renovation. There's also another item that you'll see during budget season called our annual capital. And those are for smaller items that, like when you see our HVAC and stuff on here, these are end of life that we know and needs a total replacement, total refresh. We may have a school that has one unit that's 20 years old, but it's given us fits and, the degradation's high. So we'll put that on the annual capital. And that's where the Fairview plumbing was last year and where it'll be next year based on what our engineer, which is in the budget for this year, and we'll start that process. So it wasn't on the 5-year last year, but it was on the annual capital, and that would be kind of where, to Ms. Clement's point, that would be where a Franklin type thing would be on the annual capital for items like that, not the 5-year.
Dr. Reeves?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Mr. Galbraith for his suggestions. I really like the idea. It would be nice for us to see that information so that we have historic data on the changes that have been made or the projects that have been pushed. I also want to reiterate that I really liked the idea of the heat map that was brought up in the work session, and want to encourage Mr. Golden to include that with this document when it's submitted to the County Commission. A question about procedure with regards to this document. Is there a deadline for presenting it to the County Commission, and then what is their deadline for submitting it to their rating agency?
Traditionally, the County Commission looks at it in January. So we traditionally do it in November. Now, that's been every year but one, if I'm not mistaken, and that one was last year. That the county, if I'm not, is that correct? And then the County Commission actually ended up looking at it, I may get it wrong, March or April? March. They looked at it last year in March. So I can go back and double check. The expectation from the county is still that we get it to them so that they can do it in their January meeting. As I understand it right now, they are planning on looking at it in January. But for what it's worth, last year they combined it with their capital plan and reviewed it in March. I can't speak to exactly when they have that obligation to get that to their bonding agency. But we'll double check that and find out for you all.
Okay. Also, Mr. Golden, when I was not yet elected, I sat down and met with you, and we talked about this document.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could just give a high-level summary of what you told me about this document at that time. It really helped me understand how this document is used.
Sure, thank you for that. So I'll speak to the commission first. I think I told you something to the effect of every time this goes before the commission, someone on the commission says, this doesn't commit us to spending on anything. That's the commission perspective, and my experience is every year somehow, some way, a commissioner will say that. Again, for the commission's purpose, its design is so that they can get that information to their bonding company so they know what has the potential to come. None of these items, especially at the back end of the years, none of those must come. It's just letting them know what we project. Now, for us, we do use it in a little bit deeper context. We use it for planning purposes, and we base our thoughts on in that first section. What do our projections look like? Where might our land needs come? Where might we need a new school, and when? And often those years will roll a year, depending on our student enrollment. As the example I gave you, we actually had an increase in middle school numbers this year, even though we had a net decrease. And so that was an example of what we're feeling, especially in the Nolensville area. So that's the new schools, to let the commission know these things may be coming. We also put estimates based on construction cost in there as well. Next is the major renovations. Our maintenance department works on that. They prioritize our buildings, and it's not necessarily based on age. We've had some detailed discussions on that. That while our maintenance department does have metrics based on age, they really evaluate it based on the quality of some of the systems. HVAC systems, even quality of doors, how much repair they're having to do from time to time in building to building, and they prioritize based on that. I don't know if I told you this particular example, but I have said from time to time, sometimes the furniture we bought is of such great quality that it's still in good shape when people don't want it anymore. And so even for some of those renovations, we factor in, we've still got good usable furniture, even though it might not look good anymore. Maintenance evaluates all those issues when they're scheduling renovation. The other items, the next one, the major projects, asphalt, roofs, et cetera, those are evaluated based on lifespans. And that's why we have those projections out. But generally, we don't ask for them until our maintenance department has said, in that year one, that column, that first left column, we're actually going to need it. So from a commission perspective, from our perspective, that first column, that left-hand column, we're telling the commission, you can expect we're probably going to ask for this year. On the far right column, don't trust that very much at all. We're just projecting, and it's likely to change. Final thing I want to mention is on the numbers. Some of these construction numbers have actually gone down since last year, and I don't think you and I talked about that at the time because we've noticed the cost of materials has actually gone down a little bit over the last year or so. So I hope that kind of gave an overview. We use it for a little bit more deeper planning than the commission does, but it is letting them know these things may be coming.
Just want to make a couple of observations about some of this I said at the work session, some of it I did not. But this, just for clarity, this is something that's on the annual agenda that this board votes on. We voted back in August. I realize that some of you were not on the board yet, but I'm sure that most everyone has observed our board meetings or for some period of time. We vote on an annual agenda that lays out month by month the things that we're going to take up as a board. This 5-year capital plan is on there for November, has been since I've been on the board. So this isn't something that I think is really should be a surprise to anyone. It's something that's been on the agenda, and it's been previewed for us. Number one. Number two. This is a document that really comes at the request of the county commission. I just want to underscore that this is not something that is only for our benefit. And I will point you back to I'm going to go back to May or June. You'll all remember the discussions that were had between the school board and the county commission and the back and forth over the budget and the discrepancy that we had. And we finally got to a place where we worked it out and got agreement in good faith conversations back and forth. But But one of the things that was brought up during that period, and I think was brought to light, is the importance of information between us and them, and information flow, them getting data points sooner rather than later, them not being surprised with things that are coming their way from us from a budget standpoint. That's exactly what, in my opinion, that's exactly what this document is designed to be, is giving them a look ahead at what might be coming, not committing to anything, not guaranteeing anything, but hey, this is what might be in front of us. These are the budget items we might be looking at. So it's not binding. It's not committing us to anything. There's, as was already said, there's an intent to fund. So just take the one for the middle school that's in the current fiscal year. And I know, just repeating what Mr. Golden said, the reason why this is important to get to the county commission sooner rather than later is because there is an item in there in this current fiscal year that we would be asking them to potentially fund to start a new middle school in the current fiscal year. So, and I want to point that out because, I think if we wait until January, February, March, whatever time frame we were, has been discussed, to send this over to them, we're giving them very, very little time to plan for what might be a $21 million ticket item. So, again, the intent to fund would be a vote we would take. So there'd be one more vote from us to affirm we want to spend that money, or we want them to spend that money. And then they have to vote to actually spend the money. So there's two more, I guess, hurdles that have to be reached before any of this would ever actually be spent. So I only give that context because we do have a 50% new board. I think it is important to kind of set the framework for why we're doing this, and to just give you my perspective as someone who's been through a couple of these now. Others have been through more of these than I have. But I just don't want us to get caught up in, as I said last Thursday, at the bottom right-hand number. Basically, 85% of that number would be spent sometime after 2027 if everything went according exactly to this plan. So we're talking about a fraction of this that would be in front of us this year or the next year. So again, no one wants to spend money that we don't need to spend, but it is important to just put this in context. And again, we talked about this at the work session as well, that there is population growth happening in certain pockets of the county, not everywhere. There's vacancies at certain buildings in certain places in the county, but not everywhere. So all of that has to be factored into these decisions, from a regional standpoint, not necessarily countywide. So just with that I just wanted to get that out on the table for discussion, because I want to make sure we're thinking through all of the angles on this. And I know it's a lot to take in, especially if you're a new board member. This is a pretty daunting document. I know it was when I was a new board member as well. Mr. Welch.
Thank you. Mr. Golden, looking at that number that Mr. Brown alluded to, sort of the total number in the corner there, can you ever recall when we've actually spent that much on the timeline that we've had and didn't push things back as things changed and reality happened and we adjusted accordingly with our plans that everything didn't, and we didn't end up saying, well, we don't need this right now, we're going to push it back a year or 2 years, or we're going to pull it out?
No, I do not recall any time where one 5-year capital plan has been consistent for some of these line items from the far right year all the way to the point where we fund. It will change.
Yeah, I can't either. So I think it's important to keep in mind, to Ms. Brown's point, this is a living document as well. And so while we know things will change, we also don't know which things will change too. That's the other part of it. If it's, I think we can prognosticate that some of these things will get pushed out. Growth doesn't happen, what have you, but we don't know which ones. We don't know where the growth will not happen as it's planned. We can take the best information that we can. I guess, I think it was Mike Tyson to quote, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so, same thing, we put our very best plan here, and then there's a global pandemic or what have you, and we adjust and push it out. But it would also be irresponsible of us, I think, to not put on the items here where we think, based upon the data we have, that there's a very realistic likelihood of this occurring. And so when we do all that, yes, it can skew the numbers up a little bit, but this is not a spending plan. Again, this is simply a list of these are the items that, based upon the current numbers and the very best data analysis that we have as of right now today, this is what the next 5 years could realistically look like. So as we're not surprising our funding body with these requests and these items, if and when the things that do occur.
Thank you for that. I want to mention what you mentioned, that it could be pushed back. It's interesting. Mr. Cash and I were having a conversation today about June Lake in Spring Hill. Right now, we have that scheduled for fall of 2030. It's possible that could move up depending on the construction schedule. But I will say, there are a lot of cells on this chart, and it is a lot to take in. So I want to make sure that we're respectful of that too, and it will continue to be a work in progress as you guys go through that with us.
Mr. Galbraith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to speak to, especially we've got the middle school that we're going to be looking at in the spring, and as well as the design phase of the elementary school. Nolensville is giving us that land for the developer. They've negotiated with the developer to give us the land, and they could have negotiated with the developer to give the value of that land that we would have ultimately purchased from them to do other things with it, with road improvements, or they could have taken that $3 or $4 million, whatever they would have gotten for the land might be more, and required and they could have given that to the city could have required them to do all those improvements around the roads, I guess. And when you think about June Lake, yes, there's obviously thousands of houses going in there. How fast is that going to occur? Not really sure. Right. But we don't have the schools and the capacity to handle the amount of children that are going to come there. And if they build it and those houses get built, or they don't and they get pushed back, we're not under any obligation. I just can't imagine. Allison's done a great job, and her team of looking and saying there's 2,000 houses that are approved, developments approved, that haven't been built yet. A number of them have had permits pulled, but thousands more have not. But how can we not look at that growth and say, if that growth happens, then we're going to, here's what it's going to cost, and that's what the commission is asking us to do. I just think it's irresponsible to sit here and say, well, I don't think we're going to build this, so I'm going to vote no, when we have a fiduciary duty to actually provide a document. If there's things on here that you don't want, tell us which ones, and try to strike them out, or get to something like it. At some point, if a majority of us sat here and said we don't want to do this, like, we would have to do it at some point. So there's going to have to be something that everybody gets on board with and approves. Unless, I don't know, it just feels like that is our role. We have to provide a document, and so I just don't understand voting no. Vote no and say I don't like spending $100 million on a middle school or a high school in 4 years maybe. Can we strike that from the plan? I don't know. I'm just interested to say, what would it take for everybody to get comfortable with this? Because it's beyond me. So thanks.
Mr. Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Jay and Eric on this, and so many others. Mr. Golden mentioned June Lake. We've got 2,900 family dwellings going in there, and I talked to Allison earlier, and she got requests for pickup for bus service at some of the apartments. Right around the corner from there, there's another 400 units in an apartment. You go down to 31 and Thompson Station Road, there's another 200 and plus houses underway. I mean, subdivisions along 431, 412 houses going in. We got the mill, another 50, another 150 right down the road. This place is exploding, and the purpose of this plan is a projection. This can change. It's like Mr. Welch said, it's a living document. But we've got to have something to work off of. So it's hard to say what we're going to take off or what we're going to add to, but it's a working document. And the maintenance, heating and air conditioning, they're going to go out. And we try to project those as much as possible. You know, it's not like $1,000 or $4,000 for a home unit. These units are lots of money. To tar a roof is very costly, and it's constant maintenance. Plumbing issues is constant maintenance. This is a pretty well-oiled machine in Williamson County Schools, and everything's thought about. So this document, I'm like Jay, I think you should really take a look at this before we just turn it down, because there's a lot of things on here that can change and will change. So thank you.
Mr. Golden, may I ask a question? This was talked about at the work session, but can you go back and talk about the middle school populations in this part? We're proposing for Jordan Middle School, Split Log Road, so eastern part of the county. Can you reiterate what you said about where we stand currently with student populations at the middle schools in that general area?
Sure, thank you for that. I had the exact numbers of Allison's projections at the work session. I don't have them right in front of me, but I'm going to give some approximations. We projected out projected enrollment in 2027, fall of 2027, for Mill Creek Middle School, Sunset Middle School, and Page Middle School. And we projected that there would be somewhere around 275 students over the combined capacity of those three schools in 2027. Middle school is a little bit easier to predict because we have the elementary school students to matriculate up to the next grade level. And then she included some analysis of new homes in that area. That assumes that every one of those three middle schools is at 100% capacity. We're still somewhere around 275 students above capacity. So ideally, a school's capacity is probably going to be at maybe 85 or to 90% or so to actually function, kind of at peak. So if we open up a middle school in 27, we would pull some of that so that each of those three schools would not be that full. Woodland Middle School actually would be somewhere within 15 students, give or take, of its capacity. So it's functioning very close to capacity right now, but it's been stable. So we did give you that data, but we really didn't factor that in the context of that question you asked.
And again, I think for clarity, and I'm coming to you right now. For clarity, I think we're talking about an intent to fund in the spring, which means construction would start at the earliest in the fall, right?
That's right.
At the very earliest. And that assumes it could be completed in a 2-year time period to open in the fall of 27.
That's correct.
Which may not even be realistic.
Well, we believe a 2-year construction schedule is very doable.
Is that doable?
We do. I think 18 months is the absolute minimum, and that'd be one I'd say I'm not confident we could get it done that quickly for the middle school design. We are tentatively looking at a design similar to Legacy, which was our most recent middle school. That would have that size. So I certainly invite any of you all, if you'd like to visit Legacy, to get a look at what it might look like.
Mr. Bostic.
Yeah, for me, and to Mr. Galbraith's point, which I totally understand about, that we kind of have to put this forward and that makes a lot of sense. I get why we do it. I think for me, and maybe to Donna and Margie's point as well, I guess I was unaware, maybe this happened before the new board came on, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe if we were more involved in some of how we arrived at these numbers for these specific things, which kind of goes into the methodology when creating this document to begin with, might help some of us feel a little better about voting for it to begin with, instead of just, here it is, vote on it, yes or no, right now, kind of thing, which is, I think it's just what it feels like a bit to me. And maybe that's just how it goes, but I guess to my other colleagues' points with this, just when it comes to creating this and getting to these numbers and where these things are at, I feel like we're talking about it in the rears once it's already set, and then trying to justify it to some of us why we want to spend it or do it or this or that there, when we might have just basic questions of like, well, why this over another one? And how did you arrive at some of these schools? That would kind of be my question with some of that, because I don't remember being involved in that process.
Thank you for that. And like I mentioned earlier, this is complex, especially through the rest of this year. We're going to do a double check on some other items that could have that same concern, and make sure that we address that, just like Mr. King mentioned.
It's a point well taken. It's something that we're now doing with the budget itself,
Yeah.
right? We're starting to look at that sooner, thanks to Ms. Farmer and Mr. Golden. That was a request that came from the board, that if we can get an earlier view into what the budget process is and how things are determined, where the funding sources are. So I think it's a valid point. I think it's a takeaway for maybe the next time as we do this. People need to vote however they feel on this one, but I think there's a compelling reason to go ahead and move it forward, just because the county commission, I think, needs to see it, but it's a valid point as far as process. Any other questions? All right, we're going to vote on our devices this time, so if you're in favor of advancing the capital plan, push your yes button. If you're opposed, your no.
Do recommend approval.
The vote is 9 yes, 1 no, 2 abstain.
Motion carries. We will now move on to item B, approval of the 2025-26 calendar with early release and late start days included, and then the 2026-27 calendar. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Webb, Lee Webb, who chaired the calendar committee, was unable to attend tonight, but I know we were at the work session, had some discussion. I want to point out a couple of key points that she mentioned, in addition to what I mentioned during the superintendent's report related to the basic structure. Just as a reminder, the goal is to have the best instructional calendar that the calendar committee can come up with. That committee consists of school administrators, teachers, and parents. So I want to especially thank some of the WCA representatives who were in the back who participated in that calendar. And I already talked about some of the holidays built in, but I do want to specifically mention that based on what we heard from our community, so many parents, the calendar committee brought forth 2 calendars, one for this coming year and one for, I'm going to get it wrong, for 26-27. So 25-26 and then 26-27. Really to give parents a little bit more time to plan. So we do have 2 calendars for you to review. Certainly open to any questions you may have.
The motion from Mr. Galbraith, second from Mr. Bostic. Mr. Bostic, you're recognized.
Jason, could you just speak a little bit to, because we talked some, and I know there were a couple parents that mentioned tonight, just about the changing the fall break or spring break by a week and kind of what impacts that might have.
Sure, thank you for that. The main goal of those breaks, the fall break winter break and spring break is to have an appropriate instructional break. And so the calendar committee designs that to be at the end of each quarter. I may be wrong, but as the calendar shifts from day to day, every 6 years, because you factor in leap year, the weeks tend to shift a little bit. So there may be a little bit of change, maybe every 6 years or so, based on how the calendar falls. As an example, Dr. Webb mentioned to you at the work session, I think in spring of '27, May is going to have one more week than it has next year. So sometimes it'll shift a little bit. The one difficulty we have is there are so many varied parenting plans. The individuals who spoke mentioned that they have a week-to-week, every other week shared plan. Others have different custodial structures with every other weekend. Some have summer structures different. And we did have that discussion about the structure in Tennessee for parenting plans in the event of a divorce. And there are specific lines in those parenting plans where parents evaluate what they want to do at fall break, spring break, and winter break. So those three are actually specifically on there. I understand what those parents shared, that might mean a 3-week window where one parent has the children potentially every other week. The difficulty we have is we can't resolve every issue, and a worry that I have is if we do something to accommodate one, we're going to conflict with something else. So the mission of the calendar committee is find the best instructional calendar we can.
Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason, just if I could thank you on behalf of the calendar committee, and Dr. Webb, I know has been so responsive and helpful on this, and I just want to extend my gratitude. I was one of the ones who asked just to, out of, hey, if it's possible, look forward the next year and kind of give us the rough start and end dates and breaks, just because so many people have to make, we're making plans a year in advance. The athletics are making, have to adjust their schedules every 2 years, and so so they kind of went, very much above and beyond. It's not a full. I think for the staff, it's not full for the second year, but these start dates and breaks, a year in advance. Next year it'll be, they'll be looking and looking out a year, and maybe, there may be some tweaks here and there, probably not to the starting into the breaks, but maybe some of the little election days and things, but they've accommodated all that to date. So I'm just really thankful. I think this provides a lot of stability and forward thinking, and they went above and beyond what we asked them to do, and I'm really appreciative. I think it's great.
Thank you for that. And I do want to mention, you specifically have a very good memory of this, the fall break discussion. We had an evolution over the course of years to get a week's fall break, and it was overwhelmingly a success 2 years ago. If I'm thinking, we hit in the third year maybe of that. So we worked hard on making sure that we did what we could to help our community have that stable break system. Thank you for that.
All right. Any other questions? Mr. Beasley?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the kids that are students that are in District 12 are very excited about this proposed calendar, because on October 31st next year, there are no students in school. So I know my district, they're very excited about that. So I appreciate Dr. Webb for attempting to accommodate those kids. So thank you.
Well, I will say, Mr. Beasley, it just happened to fall that way this year. I did have some middle schoolers email me during like the day before Halloween saying we needed the day after Halloween off. So that was definitely a middle school drive.
So you're saying this shouldn't be a precedent?
This is not a precedent. It just happened to be how the calendar fell.
All right, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
Calendars are approved. We will now move on to board policies for second reading. Interscholastic athletics and equal opportunity employment. I'm going to defer to Mr. Galbraith from the policy committee to get the conversation started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so our first item for second reading is 4.301 interscholastic athletics. The change that we've been looking at, so no changes since the work session. We did make some changes at for the last policy committee, but none since then. Is we're essentially looking at better defining club sports specifically for the purpose of communication and recognition by schools in the district. And so what we did do from policy was to, from our discussion in policy committee, was to remove the last section that on line 44 that says to the same extent as school-sponsored sports. So what we're doing is we're the shall is requiring schools and district to include in communicating and recognition, but for now there's still some discretion in how that needs to be done. It will be a little bit different, and it will be qualified. And these are not TSSAA sports; they are club sports, but they are students first, and they're recognized, and they are, for all intents and purposes, they're serving their schools, and their name and school colors and mascot on their jersey is their school. And so all the policy is asking is to recognize them as such.
Can I get a motion and a second to begin conversation? Motion by Mr. Galbraith, second by Ms. Wyatt. Any discussion? Dr. Johnson?
Yes. On lines 42 and 43, what was the reasoning for striking out affiliated with nonprofits? Because at the policy meeting and at the work session, one concern I really have are people profiting off the name and likeness and school colors of our schools. So I'm wondering why that was struck out, and might potentially ask for an amendment of that.
Ms. Osbrooks, would you mind speaking to that based on the policy committee discussion?
Sure. So the identifier that we are using for club sports is no longer whether it's affiliated with a nonprofit, but whether a club sport uses the name, school colors, and or mascot of a WCS school is one reason that it is struck out. And since we, as a WCS entity, do not monitor a club sport, we also don't know, unless they provide us with the information, whether or not, from a practical standpoint, they are actually affiliated with a nonprofit. So I'm not sure how we would keep up with all of that. That is not something historically that we have been able to manage.
That's good. That's good for now.
Okay. Mr. Galbraith?
Thanks.
I actually really appreciate that angle, and I just want to give a little bit of history. I've been talking about this for years. One of the roads that we went down in a past rendition of this was actually defining more of what a club sport would be, and ultimately that was more crossing the line on having our hand in the club sports than simple recognition and allowing communication that we're able to do. And so, like, I completely I do understand that. I think where we would know that they're a not-for-profit and where it would matter is if they wanted to use our facilities based on another policy, a facilities use policy, they have to be a not-for-profit in order to use that. So so the only thing they're getting here is the recognition for the students participating. But if they, and there may be other, I don't know, Jason, if there are any other reasons that we would that they would have to. That they would necessarily have to be for not-for-profits. If they want to have a board and are connected to a lot of our clubs are connected through the PTOs, and so if they want to be connected through the PTO and have a booster organization, then more than likely, well, if they're through the PTOs, then they have to be a not-for-profit. Is that a correct statement?
Some of the PTOs do fundraisers for the student organizations for the sport. I'm not aware of any PTOs that actually run the sport.
No, the clubs will have support organizations
That's
separately
right.
as a booster.
That's right. Yeah, and so those yes.
At least the support organizations will be not-for-profits.
That's right.
If not.
But you hit the main one. Our community use policy does require any user to be a Williamson County-based nonprofit. Our staff member who manages that does check. And what we know is from time to time, some of these companies might lose their nonprofit status because they failed to submit their annual form. We actually see that from time to time. So we haven't monitored them for the purpose of being a club sport. We have monitored them for field use. The most common one used to be lacrosse. Now, they may still do that. We don't know what those organizations may do. They may still want to use some of our fields in a schedule that's different from when TSSAA sets that up. But rugby, some of those other sports have used our fields for that. And you hit it right that the defining the club sport just a little bit better was part of what was attractive to us with this. With all that being said, I got to say this: this is not going to be a perfect process. It's going to be a work in progress if this passes, and it always is, right? It's already been that with sharing, but in the conversations I had with Mr. Joins, who's actually in the audience, we feel like this has the potential to make things a little bit better in celebrating students.
I don't see anybody else seeking recognition, so Mr. Golden, are you prepared to make a recommendation?
I do recommend approval.
Okay. All right, with that, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
All right, motion carries. Equal Opportunity Employment Policy 5.104. Mr. Galbraith?
You ready?
Yes, sir.
My mic's not on yet.
Let me turn
there
on
you
Mr.
go.
Galbraith, thank you.
Sorry, staring at the mic didn't work, but, so, yeah, 5.104, equal opportunity employment. So we have, the request was ultimately, per the change that we made, last month to the dress code, and this one we're both around, changes in at least in a court decision, just brought to light the different changes that happen from time to time. And so what we'll see both in the regulatory agencies as well as in the courts. And so what we have is the results of a couple of policy meeting discussions and board meeting discussions as well. But what we'll see that what is proposed today is the modification of the protected classes to mirror the EEOC language, and also the The other change to our existing policy is the addition of the reference to the Bostock case that where these several of these changes were kind of codified by the court case law.
All right, thank you for that explanation. We have a motion from Dr. Reeves, a second from Mr. Welch. Any discussion? Okay, hold on a second. Here they come. All right, Mr. Bostic, you're first.
Talked about in our work session, and several members brought up, and we discussed about removing the language and just sticking with the major categories, since it's covered under that, which is kind of Bostock kind of covers all of these subcategories under the major categories. Now we realize that that's protected that way to clean it up, so we don't have to come back and do these things several more times as things change. I'm in favor of that, for removing the language. We don't do that for any of the other categories, and I'm still unsure of the methodology or reasoning for including it for this one.
Ms. Wyatt? Yeah.
With the new buttons, if there's a motion to amend, like how does that get ordered into the order to speak? Because there's a motion to amend and a second on the floor, but how does that get ordered into the?
If you want to make a motion, then when your name comes up, then that's when you'll make your motion. Okay, so
Well,
for example, he just spoke. If he wanted
turn
to
his
make a motion
microphone
to
on.
amend, he could.
Well,
If you would.
I think the confusion is that this was registered as a motion to amend, and it's just a motion on the original policy. It's not a motion to amend yet.
Well, it is though on the screen. Instead of pressing request to speak, Claire pressed motion to amend.
Okay.
And then so I'm trying to understand.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah,
So
that's fine.
that's the, okay. So we have a motion to amend and a second to amend, but we don't have an amendment. So yours would have been a second to amend.
I didn't pull that off, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, you didn't. You amended I amended the motion to amend. I think you amended the original motion.
Got it.
Yeah, or you seconded the original.
Thank you for clarifying.
All right, so I think we need to get, we're going to get, used to this amending on the machine. We haven't historically done that. We've amended through voice votes. So the first button we push should be the motion, and the second on the original item. And then once we get that on the floor, there can be a motion to amend, okay?
But then I guess what we might have to do is we press the motion to amend and then request to speak. And then when it's your turn to request to speak, then
Right.
Is that how we'd have to?
Which is what I did, it just didn't respond.
It just didn't respond, okay.
So you can't do both?
It
We
didn't
need to get back
respond.
on the original motion, right. Okay, can I just request that, Claire, that you withdraw your motion, and Jay, you would withdraw your second, so we can get back on the original motion, and then we can take up amendments at that point, if there's no discussion on the original motion.
That's fine.
Okay.
Do I?
Can you, how does she withdraw the motion?
Should be back.
What's
We're
that?
back to the original.
Should be back in the original.
Okay, so, Ms. Wyatt, you want to speak to the original motion?
Yes,
Okay.
Can we hear from Ms. Osbrooks about your recommendation and also from the attorney for the school board, recommendation on this policy?
I'm happy to speak to my recommendation. From a legal standpoint, we've talked about the Bostock case and the fact that it created a additional protected class in that, number one, it's sexual orientation, and also a protected class in gender identity or expression. Those were added to the policy in 2021 and continue to be the law of the land today. Since it's a U.S. Supreme Court decision, I don't anticipate right now that being overturned, since there's not anything in the pipeline. Additionally, we have talked about the EEOC is the federal enforcement arm. They recognize and include the word sex in their equal opportunity employment policy, but then also have in parentheses the language that we have added in red, which is including pregnancy, sexual orientation, or gender identity or expression. That is why those are in parentheses, to follow with the enforcement arm that would investigate and does investigate any complaint of discrimination made by an employee for a protected class. So it is still the recommendation of legal and human resources, because remember, this is a policy in Section 5, human resources, to keep this language in the policy as we recommended back in 2021.
Okay, so my understanding that we're opening ourselves up to liability if we do not include those protected classes.
There is that potential, yes, and that was the case that I spoke about at the work session, where a funeral home was found to discriminate against a employee based upon their transgender status. And part of the remedy, in addition to hundreds of thousands of dollars, was to update their policy to include this language and to provide specific training regarding following this policy and having this policy language included.
Thank you.
Mr. Galbraith?
I thought I was after Claire. I thought she was on first.
All right, we have no speakers on the original motion. Anyone else seek recognition?
I have a screen that says it's a request to amend.
Okay, it's not showing up on here. Let's just do it verbally. You want to just seek recognition?
I also can't request to speak.
Okay, Dr. Reeves, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to amend the policy by striking the parenthetical after the term sex.
Okay, that's a proper motion, proper second. So just to restate, the amendment is to remove everything in the parentheses after the word sex that's currently in red font. We've got a second on the board. Any discussion?
Did you say everything in red?
Everything in the parentheses.
Everything in the parentheses following the word sex, which is in red font. Okay, so this is a question for you on the motion. That would remove the word pregnancy, which is also stricken in the sentence above that. Do we want to restore that, or do we not?
I believe we should be consistent. And so what I believe we should do here is include the 9 federal protected classes in this policy and footnote any appropriate legal references. And that creates a clean policy that will be durable and stand the test of time as the legal landscape changes. We just went through this with the dress code. We all know that court challenges come up, that regulatory bodies get challenged on their interpretation of laws, and so that's why I am advocating for this change. Understanding that we don't discriminate against anyone, that our HR training for any Williamson County employee who does hiring and firing is going to comply with all anti-discrimination federal, state, and local laws. So when I looked at the EEOC website, sex is the federal protected class, and in parentheses, it includes pregnancy, sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression, and that is why I think we strike the parenthetical and leave sex as the protected class.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend the policy in front of us to remove everything in line 4 that is in parentheses. Is that correct? Okay. Any discussion on that amendment? I see none. We are ready. Hang on.
I'm sorry.
On the amendment?
Yeah, I was covering it up with my phone. Sorry.
All right, Mr. Welch?
So our standard operating procedure has always been that when we create policy that is driven by federal or state law or regulatory agencies at the federal or state level, that we mirror the language from that legislation or the regulatory language. So this is a break from that. It just is, because the language that we are currently using, Ms. Albrook, correct me if I'm wrong, comes directly from the EEOC's recommended language for the policy. Is that correct?
As to that section.
Thank you.
Of the policy, correct.
Right. So we are breaking from that, first of all. We have also heard from our general counsel, and to be clear, we have no authority to exclude those categories. We can't not cover these categories and changes. But what we can do, as we have heard from our general counsel, is we can increase the risk and liability of the district by not having that in this policy. That is what our general counsel has told us. Mr. Cook, I would like to ask you for a second opinion on that, if you concur.
Mr. Welch, you're asking me to opine on a policy. I'm here for procedural questions.
Fair
So
enough.
It's beyond what I'm here
Mrs.
for.
Hall, as our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and a licensed attorney yourself, I would like your recommendation on this.
So thank you for asking from the human resources perspective. I think for me, despite the legal arguments on both sides of this, which obviously we still have a legal obligation to not discriminate on any of this, I'm concerned about our employees. We have a very, we try to have a very open and safe environment. We want to be a great place to work. So what's concerning is alienating some employees by taking the language out.
Thank you. And Mr. Golden, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've already opined from our work session last week that you didn't think this was a good idea and you were not going to recommend this change.
That's right. And I do want to speak, Dr. Reeves, thank you for what you spoke to when you said we're not going to discriminate. I want to make sure that that's a key emphasis. No matter what language you choose, we do not discriminate. We will not. And if we get an accusation, then we will investigate and take whatever action is appropriate. As part of that, as I spoke to at the work session, I think it's wise for us to include this language. The proposal from our attorney was to move those existing words into the parentheses to bring it more in line with the EEOC recommendation to Ms. Osbrook's comment about enforcement. So I know it's a little bit premature because the question came up, because you usually ask me before the vote, but yeah, I don't think it's wise to make this change.
Thank you. So in this example, when we talk about cleaning it up, what we're talking about is breaking away from our long-time established procedure of mirroring federal and state law and/or regulatory agencies and recommended. We're talking about going against the advice of both our general counsel, our assistant superintendent for human resources, and our superintendent, and doing so in a way that we have been told increases the risk and liability for the district and doesn't change, from a legal perspective, anything still. It's simply just a more risk for the district. So I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will agree with one thing that Mr. Welch said, and that this doesn't change anything legally. And I wanted to help you just reiterate, Jason. So, and I changed my mind over this after the work session, after hearing some of the discussion, because at the end of the day, nothing increases our risk of liability if we continue to follow the regulatory agencies and we follow state and federal laws, and that includes case law and these 3- and 4-letter agency laws or regulations. And so what it ultimately came down to me for me is the fact that here we've modified this policy 3 years ago. The counter policy to this on the dress code was coming from a different agency, and we removed that actually with the recommendation of council on that one, actually because right now there's legal status, there's fights in the court and they're adjoined, and so so that stuff changes all the time. Those interpretations change all the time. What hasn't changed is the protected classes. They've been consistent for, what is this coming from? The Civil Rights Act of 1964, not changing at all. So policy is going to be solid. Our interpretations, I don't want to have to change policy every time somebody changes their interpretation at one of the federal agencies. And so I think this is a much better precedent to set in terms of making the policy broad and giving us lots of flexibility for Mr. Golden, for you to enact your everything that you have to do from a procedure standpoint and a training and of HR and staff. I have 100% confidence that we're not going to be discriminating against anybody for anything, whether it's on this list or that's not who we are. That's not what we do. And if we don't discriminate, then the fact that our policy is broad or narrow is not going to matter in the least. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.
Ms. Wyatt?
Thank you. I disagree. I think it does change. Even if it doesn't change our liability, it does change how we support our employees. And when I think about our strategic plan, and I think about that we are against discrimination and that we are in favor of providing a safe environment for our employees, I just think I'm against this amendment. I think that it should be included as proposed. Thank you.
Dr. Reeves?
Could you put the policy up on the screen, please? Could you scroll down, please? Thank you. So I did want to point out that we are leaving the legal reference to the Bostock case, which is very important because that expanded the definition of sex to include those terms. But since we are striking the parenthetical that includes pregnancy, I wanted to ask if we need to add a separate legal reference for that particular piece, because we do have legal references for genetic information and disability and I can't,
Age.
Yeah, most of the protected classes have a corresponding legal reference.
Yes, that would be a recommendation if we would need to add that.
So if I may, Dr. Reeves, ask a similar question in a different way. Dana, is pregnancy included in the definition of sex in this context, or is it a separate code?
So there are, to answer your question, yes and no.
Okay.
It is referred, and the same logic is applied as to why we are removing sexual orientation and gender expression but are there additional federal laws that protect someone because they are pregnant that we could cite at the bottom? The answer is yes.
Okay.
With that being said, I do, if it is the will of the board to remove that language, I do agree with Claire's statement earlier that you're wanting to be consistent. With that said, this policy would, my recommendation, if this motion to amend passed, is that this policy come back in January with an editorial change. Because to your point, it is not in there. I would want it to be if the motion to amend passes.
Dr. Reeves, would you like to amend your motion to include restoring the word pregnancy on line 3 that is currently stricken, along with deleting everything in the parentheses on line 4? I think that would accomplish what you're suggesting by restoring that word and keeping it in there explicitly defined.
I know I want to remain consistent in that I believe the policy should be broad and list all 9 protected classes, and pregnancy is not its own protected class. So I think it's very important to be consistent.
Okay.
And if our legal counsel is recommending an additional footnote, then I think we should do that as a editorial change.
Okay, so the amendment remains as previously stated, and it's on the floor. Any further discussion, Mr. Bostic?
Yeah, I would just agree with Claire on that. I think in the need to be consistent, we believe it's covered under the broader category with the rest of these here. I would also like to point out that we also have written in the policy or any other characteristic protected by federal, state, or local laws, which covers anything additional that might come up now or in the future. And I would also like to point out that discrimination would have to occur and be proven and for this to be an issue. Not whether the language is in here or not, whether discrimination actually occurred. And if we're worried about that, I think that's a different discussion.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? All right, we're ready to vote, and we're voting on the amendment. If the amendment passes, it will be part of the original motion, and we'll vote on the original motion. Let's vote.
Same recommendation as I made earlier. Do not recommend.
Just to be clear, a yes vote is to add the amending language that Dr. Reeves has proposed. A no is not to add the language.
The vote is 9 yes, 3 no.
Okay, the amendment passes. We're now back on the original policy as amended. Any discussion? All right, we're ready to vote.
I do not recommend this change.
I'm sorry.
I do not recommend this change.
So this is the, I'm sorry, request to speak. Is this the original motion that was on the floor? Now
This is the original motion as amended.
As amended.
Yeah. The original policy as amended. And the only change was the amendment that we just adopted that Mr. Golden had stated his disapproval for.
Okay.
The vote is 9 yes, 3 no.
Okay, motion passes. All right, we added, as a reminder, we added school board norms as the next item on the agenda. And I'll just refer you to our discussion last week. This is a fairly simple change that we're proposing, and that is to add a line 25, which says board members should support having a vote of at least 75% of the sitting board members in favor of a non-binding resolution before it is presented to the Williamson County Legislative Delegation. So essentially, doesn't change a majority vote to pass something, to pass a resolution. It just says that we must have a 75% or 9 votes in favor in order for it to be, in order for Mr. Golden to be instructed to move it on, to send it on to our legislature, our legislative delegation from Williamson County. Can I get a motion and a second on that? Motion by Mr. Bostic, second by Dr. Johnson. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're ready to vote.
Mr. Chair, I do recommend this addition.
Thank you.
The vote is 11 yes, 1 no.
Motion passes. All right, we're now on to approval of the 2024-25 superintendent's goals. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Board, for the discussion that we had both at our planning session and at our work session. Based on that discussion, I have added a third specific proposed goal, and I'm going to go ahead and read that since we did not have this mentioned in detail at our work session. But first, I want to just give just the core content of the first two. Mainly, number one is to focus on bullying and develop a plan to take our next best steps towards addressing bullying behaviors for the coming school year. And then second, to propose a budget that I mentioned actually during my superintendent's report that addresses competitive pay with a focus on supplements and hard-to-fill positions. This third item I am going to read: to identify opportunities to access alternative funding sources for WCS academic, arts, and athletic programming through collaborative efforts with other stakeholders, e.g. PTOs, booster clubs, local businesses, private individuals, et cetera. So if you all approve this, I'm looking forward to that work. And especially in that last goal, I think we've got an opportunity to get some stakeholders involved to see where our community is.
Can I get a motion and a second to get this on the floor? Motion by Dr. Reeves, second by Ms. Hibma. Any discussion, questions for Mr. Golden regarding these goals? Mr. Cash?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am just glad to see this in your goals, Mr. Golden, because I think you've learned from this group that there's a lot of money out there, and we just got to get out there and seek it and raise money and get these arts and teachers and whatnot paid what they have coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cash. To that point, I just want to give a reminder, our PTOs brought in about $14.9 million last year for their programs. We've got some incredible support focused on students, and we'll see what we can do to work on building on that.
Mr. Galbraith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, that's PTOs and boosters.
And
so,
boosters, thank
yeah.
you. Did I not mention boosters?
Well, it's okay. You didn't do it intentionally.
Well, at least at Ravenwood, it's one entity. So.
But I so I do thank you for adding that third one after our work session. But I'm pretty sure we should be able to tie that to a strategic plan goal. I know you just it was late and
Well, I looked
okay.
and I felt like there would have just
Nothing
been
really
a bit of a
fit.
bootstrap. And so
Okay.
I felt like just keep it clean.
I didn't look until I just noticed
Yeah.
that both of the other two had strategic plan. I feel like I mean it certainly fits within our mission of trying to fund, but
Yeah, there wasn't a specific objective,
Okay.
but I will say there's some that pop into my head that weren't directly related. Increasing student participation in extracurricular activities. Some of those goals of competitive pay packages, et cetera, right, that are others.
Yeah.
They have the potential to be touched on that.
right. Okay. No, thank you.
Just for the benefit of perhaps our new board members, can you give a time frame by which you expect to have completed these goals, or give us a report, if you will, on these goals?
Sure. So number one, the strategic plan objective related to student bullying, spring 2025. My goal is to have a plan for you by May because that's my evaluation. So I want to have that report so that you can evaluate the success of that. So in that context, we have about a 6 to 7 month window. The budget, we plan to propose to you a budget in February. So I will have a proposal for you on that one in February. Number three, I plan to have an update for you in May before my evaluation. So May, February, May.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? All right, we're ready to vote.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
The goals are approved. Our final item for the night, the appointment of a PECA Special Question Committee. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We participate in what the state describes as the Professional Educators Collaborative Conferencing Act, or PECA. Every 3 years, we go through the process of renewing that. One of the content areas for that is once the professional staff submit signatures that tell us they want to do this again for the next 3 years, there is a question that is sent out to all professional employees, licensed employees under the state law, asking them, do they want to participate, with a couple other questions related to that. The law requires a special question committee consisting of a board member and a representative from the teachers group to evaluate that and, in essence, set up the structure for how that question's asked. So we have that memo making that recommendation so that you approve Mr. Galbraith for the school board and Angela Frederick, who is the president of the Williamson County Education Association, to oversee that.
I get a motion and a second to get this on the floor. Motion by Ms. Clements, second by Mr. Bostic. Mr. Cash, you're recognized.
I just wanted to make a motion. Sorry.
Okay. We got a third. All right, any questions, any discussion? All right, we're ready to vote.
Recommend approval.
The vote is 12 yes, 0 no.
All right, that is approved. I will remind everyone what you already know, which is we don't have a regularly scheduled meeting in December. So I hope everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving. We are adjourned.